I recently did a video showing how I installed a EV charger out by our parking area in our driveway. Had to run some 1.5-inch conduit, that's this right here, and came up from under the house up into the side of this box because there was no room at the bottom of the breaker box to come up where everything else did. So I had to cut a couple of holes here. The problem is this plaster, it's not drywall. If you've ever worked with plaster, you know it's much more difficult to cut into and do anything with. So I searched the internet. I always go to YouTube to get advice for myself, and I always like to share what I've learned. But I cut a couple of access holes here, one here and one down here. I was able to drill a hole down through the bottom plate on the wall and feed the conduit up in the bottom and fit it all together. That all worked real well, passed inspection, no problem. But I thought one thing I didn't really talk about in that video was how I cut these holes. And I thought I'd share that with you. Basically, and I learned this and others on the internet, you drill a bunch of little holes is one way to do it, and then use something like a keyhole saw to saw through them. Since we're using this as a laundry room, I didn't want to generate any dust. So I'm going to show you how I did it to keep from generating dust and how I plan to patch these holes once I'm finished. A couple things will be helpful. Some hearing protection, a dust mask if you can't control the dust pretty well. Now what I'm doing to control the dust is I have a pretty good cordless vacuum here, and I'll show you what I did. Also, having a hammer drill will help. This, so we can get that on the hammer drill, and a masonry bit. It's more like drilling through concrete than it is drilling through drywall. So I just basically, I'm going to drill a couple more holes here. Just hold the vacuum up near there and just put this up there. You see that does a pretty good job controlling the dust. Now to saw through it, you need to open up a little wider. Something like that. Just get something like a keyhole saw. Use your vacuum, and you can just. Now you probably could use a saber saw, but that would throw dust everywhere. There's no way I want dust flying all around this house. So that's basically how I did it. Cut out the hole here and the one up there. I saved the pieces, so now we're going to put the pieces back in the wall. This one's cracked. I think I can help control that a little bit with some wood glue. Even though it's plaster, I think that'll work. I want to go ahead and mention that I did use that Gorilla Ultimate wood glue, and that worked real good to get that crack sealed back up. It held real good. Okay. These are just some clamps. It's handy to have some kind of clamps here. Now, these are just wood shims. I took these wood shims, put a little bit of glue on the areas that are going to be on the back side of that opening. Just clamp it in place, let it dry, and this is really in there. Over here, what I'm going to have to do, because I'm right up against this old rough cut stud here, is I'm going to have to use something else. So I'm probably going to use this large paint stick and go all the way across like that. So once I've got these pieces glued in, we'll glue in those pieces. Then I just finish it with like I would drywall. Tape and sheetrock mud the edges. So let me get these glued in. We'll take a look at it. This is the larger piece that I'd cut out of the laundry room wall. Now for finishing any kind of wall, especially something like drywall and plaster, you don't want anything protruding up higher than the surface, general surface of the wall, because plaster very difficult to sand down, And to hold it in place, I'm going to use just these deck screws are treated, and just to hold them into those shims to hold it in place. I'm going to glue it and use these screws. But just wanted to show you that I had to countersink these holes with a larger masonry bit. I use that small masonry bit to make the hole, to make sure the head of that is down below the surface. I think that'll work. We'll give it a try and see. Okay, I've got all those shims in place there. They're in place there. I'm going to remove the clamps. We're going to try to go ahead and put this piece in that top hole there. Now, before I took that piece out, I marked the arrows pointing up. That helped reposition it when I put it back in. And you could just use a piece of drywall, and but I thought, well, why buy drywall when I've got this? So that's why we're doing it this way. I often make mistakes. I had to re-drill my holes here to better position to screw into those wood shims up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put glue on those shims. I'm just using a Gorilla, basically called Gorilla Wood Glue Ultimate. I think even Elmer's glue would probably work. But this glue does work pretty good. And I'll put the screws in to hold it in place, and we'll let it cure, and that should do it. Okay, I'm going to put some glue in here. And we'll get that up in place. Really want this all recessed if possible. It's easier to build it up with sheetrock mud than it is trying to sand something like this down. Whoops, there's my hole right there. That's what I get from drilling the wrong holes. I finished getting these sections of plaster wall that I cut out. I've got them back in there, and they're really sturdy. And on both the upper and lower. Now my wife is more adept at finishing drywall, so I'm going to let her finish the rest. And so I just wanted to share this part of this with you in this video. I hope you found this video to be useful. If you did, please like it and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. I think you'll find that this is one way to do this. You're going to find other ways on YouTube and doing Google searches, but just wanted to share this with you, and I hope it's useful in your project. Thank you for watching.